good life suggestion.
I said no
I don't.
promises.
I've had a couple concussions. I've broken my wrist and elbow. But that's about it. There's been no other, thankfully, no femurs or torn ACLs or anything along those lines.
I've had a few concussions. Probably just some like strains. I dislocated my thumb once, but that was minor. So yeah, nothing too big.
How'd you do that? Do I want to know?
High school football. We were doing
Back in the good old days.
the glory days. We were doing blocking drills where we had to like rip through a block, and when my arms went out and I went to rip, my thumb went up into the face mask, and my thumb stayed in the face mask, but my hand kept going.
Love that.
Yep. So then I like picked up my hand, and I like kind of like hung it upside down, and I stopped moving my hand, but my thumb was still like spinning, doing circles.
Nice.
Yeah. But so my only other permanent ailment is my color blindness. So I want to know if it was just me this week or if you noticed it too. During the Green Bay New England game, the red stripes on the Patriots shoulder pads were so weird on our TV. Like it looked like they were constantly kind of just moving just a little bit.
Looks great in 4K on my side.
Okay, so maybe it was just me. But it was like such an intense red, and it was really sketchy and very very distracting whenever they'd like show close-ups of New England.
Yeah, all looks good here. No, actually, since you bring up your glory days, Sammy and I've been wanting to go to a high school football game around here just to see what it was like, and I tried to choose a pretty relevant game because Minnesota high school football is nowhere near what it would be in like Texas or Florida or whatever. But there's still some really good, really big schools in our area that are probably filled with a lot of great athletes at the high school level. So I'm like, all right, well, let's go to Eden Prairie versus Prior Lake, which is a top 10 matchup for Minnesota football. And I was really excited, had fun. Don't get me wrong. It's just that there's this type A-ness about me when it comes to football, where if something is not correct, I just can't help but point it out and like tell Sammy, I'm like, oh, did you see what they just did there? That dude did this when he should have done this, and therefore that whole play was ruined. And for being two really big schools with what looks to be a lot of really good talent, the fact that both teams ran a triple option offense kind of offended me. I was expecting a lot better. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, their blocking schemes were great, but for teams that are really big and have what I perceived a lot of talent, I don't understand why they were running triple option offenses. They definitely seemed like they could sling the ball if they wanted to. So it was quite underwhelming, I'll say. I was expecting better.
So that's what amazed me. So when I played high school football, a lot of the teams ran the triple option. Even like Burlington, where Tony Romo went to school, they were in our conference. Their offense was the triple option. Kenosha Bradford, where Melvin Gordon went to school, ran the triple option. I think Racine Park, where who from Wisconsin went there? Was it John Clay? One of the other Wisconsin running backs went there. Pretty sure they run the triple option. Again, for running back it makes sense. But now it's amazing to me. So I just watched the local NBC station here was showing a game on Friday night between Denmark and Luxembourg. No, not the countries. There is a region of northeastern Wisconsin where every city is named after a European country.
Sounds about right.
They were playing each other, and these are two smaller schools relative, again, to some of these like Florida, Texas places. But even they were running a pretty good spread offense, and I was like, wow, this quarterback could really sling it.
Yeah. And I get that, certain teams have limitations. And even if you're a big school, there's going to be a graduating class that's just kind of subpar compared to other graduating classes that you may have either coming up or have had in the past. But to me, you can't sit here and tell me that if you're a top 10 program that the triple option is the best way forward for your team. So that was my mini rant. I also have to think that region in northeastern Wisconsin you're referring to probably went through a pretty difficult time in World War II. When you see the newspaper headlines like Luxembourg's been invaded and these people in northeast Wisconsin start panicking.
Well, Also, Alaska is there, so like nuclear threat, Alaska, like during the Cold War and stuff. I'm sure they caught some of that flack.
Yeah. I don't. Did you? I texted you a page. I know you were working today. I texted you the page in our website with our record tracker. I don't know if you got a chance to check that out today.
I did not. I was gonna pull it up because I thought it might come up in the.
I think there's anybody. It's on our website. It's at the top. You just click the page record tracker, and basically
Matt,
I'm going through and tracking
what is our website?
anybody in the top 100. It's on our Twitter bio. It's
Okay.
it's an unfortunately long name because I didn't pay for it. So that's the free version, but it has Mouthguard Pod in it twice, and it's through Wix. But there's a couple that stand out. First of all, Travis Kelce is now 60th all-time in receiving yards. Mason Crosby is now 16th in field goals all-time. But I think my personal favorite is, it's always going to be something related to Kirk Cousins. 37th in passing yards now. 37th.
That's crazy. That is insane.
That is crazy. Do you think of Kirk Cousins as an all-time great quarterback?
No, but it just shows you how longevity in today's era can get you into any record book.
Which is what Richard Sherman said about Matt Stafford after the Super Bowl, and is like, well, Matt Stafford's now definitely a future Hall of Famer because look at his stats and now he has a ring. It's like, well, is he though?
Wow, this is an interesting stat. Derrick Henry has fewer rushing attempts than Melvin Gordon. I know Gordon's been around a little bit longer, but Derrick Henry's just been like a wagon the last few years.
Oh yeah, he has the potential to easily get into the top 25 of a lot of these categories if he could stay healthy. Or like your boy Devontae, he is already 58th in receptions all time.
Wow.
695, and he's been playing since what, 2014?
Yeah.
Crazy. All right, well, I do want to do that name recognition game first before I go on a rant about the Rams. What is the first thing you think of when you hear the name Clinton Portis?
Honestly, the Washington Redskins.
I think of Champ Bailey first.
I just picture this like some big ass shoulder pads in like the white jersey. I think he was 26, right, when he was on Washington.
Something like that.
Huh.
What didn't he like do something super goofy and get like fined once?
Yeah.
He was 26, yeah.
I think he just went to prison earlier this year for like half a year.
Oh yeah, didn't he defraud the government or something?
Yeah.
Sentenced to 6 months. After he was originally facing 10 years, so I guess 6 months. I mean, never good, but it could have been a lot worse, it sounds like. So, well, there you go. Champ Bailey trade with the Broncos, also prison, also here in war number 26. So, there you go. Got more of those come. But yeah, the Rams 49ers game was last night. This is Rams offense. It does absolutely nothing for me. Matt Stafford does absolutely nothing for me. I guess the first question, so the 49ers won 24-9, had a good pick six. Debo made the whole Rams defense look like idiots. The number one question I have is, I know it's a little early in the season, don't want to be too overreacty, but they've not looked good at any point this season so far. Was mortgaging their whole future for one Super Bowl worth it, in your opinion?
Yes.
Because I see them going on this, sure, getting that Super Bowl is super cool or whatever, and a really important legacy piece for a lot of the guys on that team. But I think they're about to go into this cycle that the Philadelphia Eagles just went into and came out of when they won their Super Bowl, because they went through 4 years of misery after they won the Super Bowl too.
I mean, it's only 4 years. Look at where like some of these poverty franchises have been for the last 2 decades.
Go ahead, say
Ask
it.
them. I wasn't going to say your team. You guys have been to a Super
okay.
Bowl in the last 2 decades. You've been to the playoffs. You've
2
been
decades.
division winners. This brings up a really interesting question. So I've heard this brought up before on either the radio or another, I don't know where. But as a Chicago Bears fan, would you rather?
We're already getting here.
Yes. Well, any fan. I'm just asking you because you're a Bears fan.
Okay.
Would you rather be guaranteed one Super Bowl and then 9 straight years of like 3-14 football, or would you rather be guaranteed 10 years of playoff berths with an opportunity to win a Super Bowl in all 10 of those years, but it's never guaranteed? Which one would you take?
I don't know. Let me ask you.
No, you have to answer first.
Well, I
already
need
have my
like
answer.
a first. I need a first hand. Oh, I know what your answer is going to be. You take the Super Bowl because you've just went through 10 years of. No, you'd rather. Wow.
Listen.
Okay.
Listen. No. So I actually thought about that long and hard. So when I think back to like some of my favorite seasons as a Packers fan, some of them are those years that like you catch those runs, you're unexpectedly good. Like in 2016 when we started 4-6 and Rodgers made his whole, I think we can run the table. I remember how down like I was as a fan. The next 8 weeks was some of the most fun I've ever had as a Packers fan. Like just riding that wave was so incredible. And then like 2019 when it was LaFleur's first season and we were coming off like a dreadful 2018 season. So fun to just have like a good season when it wasn't expected. And then even in 2020, and that might have been because of COVID and there wasn't really a lot going on in life. But I just like remember having so much fun that season and how many like good games that there were, that like, yes, a Super Bowl as a fan is obviously like the goal and that's where you want your team to go. But I don't know if 1 year, and again, it's easy for me to say because we do have a Super Bowl or 2 Super Bowls in my lifetime. But right here, right now, I would rather take 10 years of guaranteed playoffs with the opportunity to win a Super Bowl than 1 guaranteed Super Bowl and then 9 straight seasons of trash. Because that'd be 9 seasons is a long time.
You're telling me. I mean, let's say just conservatively 9 of the last 10, and the one was an aberration. I would tend to agree. You just have to think if you're a team in one of those situations where you have 10 in a row, that one's going to fall your way, right? You would think.
You would think. We didn't make the playoffs 10 years in a row, so who knows? We'll never know.
Yeah, the one also aberration.
No, there's 2 straight years we didn't make the playoffs.
What, 17? You didn't make it 17-18 or 18-19?
No, 17-18, because we went from Brett Hundley to the Mike McCarthy firing year.
That was a fun year. 2018 was fun all around. Bears were good. Packers sucked. We'll get one of those days again in the next 10 years. But
I know we got to keep like the train moving tonight, but I also just have to say I love when the Packers are in the playoffs, and it's such a blast. But like the come down when they lose sucks so bad. It's terrible. It's the worst. I don't even want to watch the rest of the playoffs. In 2018, when we didn't make the playoffs, I had more fun watching the playoffs that year than I did any other year because I could sit down for every game and just say, I don't care what happens. I just want to watch a good-ass game.
I love the playoffs because, we're never involved. So it's like it's really fun football. It's just like, oh, this is really high pressure, and like I'd be sweating my ass off if my team was in it. But
for two years, I got to root against the Vikings in 2017, and then I got to root against the Bears in 2018. So it was just like, it was great.
Yeah, I always have the Packers to look forward to in the playoffs for other reasons. So, but yes, I think I would take the Bears being good for 10 years. But to circle back to the Rams, so got to be careful how I phrase this. Would you still do the Stafford trade? Seeing what they gave up plus to commit to Stafford, not only with the draft picks and financially, but now to see that Jared Goff in his second year with Detroit seems to really be blossoming.
Yes.
You would still do the trade?
Yes. It won them a Super Bowl. Whether or not Jared Goff could have is a coulda, woulda, shoulda, but like you won the Super Bowl.
I don't agree with that, though. I don't think Stafford was the key difference. I mean, like, I think Goff, his one glaring negative was that he played pretty poor against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. But he did a lot of good things to get them there.
Oh, I don't disagree, but I'm just saying they won the Super Bowl. I wouldn't do anything different.
I don't know. Their draft or their capital draft capital is poor. Their salary cap is ultra poor. And some of the decision making, like trading Robert Woods and eating his contract and then giving Allen Robinson $30 million guaranteed for the next 2 years and being stuck with him, is looking that one looks. I could see both sides of the argument for the Stafford Goff trade. The getting rid of Robert Woods, eating his contract, and signing Allen Robinson is turning to be looking to be one of the all-time backfires in recent memory as far as trades go.
And that one I think is a little bit hindsight 2020. I mean, I think there was probably some people that felt the same way during the trade, but I also think that it's easy to sit back and say that now. But like going into it, like I think a lot of people thought Allen Robinson was better than what his stats portrayed in Chicago and thought he could have been a very good receiver. I guess we'll never know because they never throw him the ball.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, what I saw right before we got on, that Cooper Kupp has more catches than Justin Fields has completions so far this year.
That's crazy.
Makes me feel so good as a fan of
that is
team.
Insane. I didn't see that. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's awful. There's a couple kind of notable things that happened in the NFL the past week. 15 of the 16 games were going into the fourth quarter were one possession lead or less. Or I guess there can't be less than one possession. So it was a one possession lead. So it made for a really fun witching hour on Sunday.
And if I would have told you the one game that wasn't one score in the fourth quarter, would you believe me that it was KC and Tampa?
No, that would not have been the one. So I think the one that's made the most headway as far as news was definitely Bengals-Dolphins and the Tua Tagovailoa injury. So we touched on it last week. We brought out the tinfoil hats, sponsored by Reynolds Wrap, and wanted to go into conspiracies. Tua is starting against the Bengals, and I think it was like second quarter, has a really nasty head injury again for the second week in a row. Allegedly, this was his first head injury. I don't know if we can prove factually that he had a head injury against the Bills, but again, we just have eyesight and common sense. And he was knocked out of the game, had to be carted off or stretchered off, was able to fly home with the team, but has been ruled out already this week in their matchup. So Bengals did win 27-15, kind of a footnote, because Tua's health was obviously a bigger concern for everybody. So I don't know how else to ask it. I guess now what? What are your thoughts about how everything's kind of gone down? The independent neurologist has been fired that reviewed him after the Bills game. There's been a lot of fallout. There's going to continue to be a lot of fallout, but what now?
I know this sounds really cliche, but first and foremost, I just hope Tua's good. Not just good as in he can walk and he can breathe, but I don't know why I said breathe, but just can live a regular life. But you and I know, I'm going to not to go too far away from football here, but Dario Franchitti still talks about how he has this mental fogginess from a lot of the accidents he had in IndyCar. I just hope Tua doesn't experience any of that ever, having what clearly appeared to be two back-to-back, concussions within the span of 4 or 5 days. So that's most important, is I just hope that guy's good. Secondly, I'm really regretting the fact that I had any faith in the system and that I thought good would prevail, but that's one of my toxic traits, is I always think the best of people and the best of situations. I know. So I have no idea what the investigation uncovered or what he did wrong or what flaws that there were. But I just think it highlights again how much needs to be tweaked, because players will always need to be protected from themselves, and I think it's really hard to navigate those situations, because again, I have no idea what their current process looks like or how they figure it out. But like I said last week, I was put through tests when I was in high school, and they told me there is no way you can lie about your head status with these tests. These tests are going to show where you are at mentally, physically, and just if you're good to go. And it wasn't until I could pass those tests that they let me play again. So I don't know, again, if they were lying. I have no idea. But to me, it seems like there is a path here. The NFL just needs to figure out how do they actually stick to that path, and how do they make sure people aren't undermining the system, specifically the organizations. Because what I thought was really interesting, did you see the footage of the Matt Moore hit from the playoffs in 2017?
Negative.
So Matt Moore, quarterback for the Dolphins, 2017, gets absolutely smoked in the head, misses a play for an apparent head injury, and later comes out that he had a back injury, and that's why he acted the way he did, and he went back in the game. Kind of odd that both these situations it was a back injury. Again, not saying it's a systemic thing with that organization, but who knows?
You got to say Reynolds wrap before you do that. Come on, man. We talked about this.
Sorry, Reynolds Rat. Please send our check, because with that check, I then pay the NFL officiating series, and my checks have missed the last few weeks.
Yes, you can't go into a 2017 conspiracy theory about a back injury without saying Reynolds wrap first. It's a contractual obligation with our non-existing contract. So yeah, my thoughts are pretty much mirroring yours. I do hope Tua is okay. Just commenting about the game, the Bengals looked really good. I think their secondary and defense looked really good. Joe Burrow looked really crisp. Jamar Chase took a little bit of time to get going, but T. Higgins looked fantastic. On the Dolphins side, nothing really impressed me about them. Teddy looked okay when he came in. Tua had one or two really good throws, and other than that, he honestly didn't do a whole lot for me. And, it's never good to see him get injured, obviously, even though I'm not his biggest cheerleader. But there was some throws that I definitely think he wanted to have back prior to going down with his injury. So,
how much of that could have been attributed to his injury, though?
But all a footnote, because we just want him back as healthy as possible. And then, once he's healthy, if he happens to get benched, then oh well. But Vikings beat the Saints in London. Packers' first game in London next weekend. I didn't know how they got out of that for so many years. And it's a home game, so you guys lost a home game.
Yeah, but we still have 8 home games because the Titans are coming to town as our 9th home game.
Your ninth home game is that's dumb.
Which I have a feeling that's what they're going to start doing. So every team still has the 8 home games. They'll probably have the home team be the a team that's got 9. Also, did you see this is the first time both teams playing in London are above 500?
Yeah, it's crazy what happens when you don't send the Jaguars and whoever over to fill that void. So yeah, I don't have too much. I'd say the Vikings don't look as crisp as they should, and their defense definitely doesn't look very good. So I don't know what's gonna quite happen this week when you have an awful offense against what seems to be a kind of an out of funk defense. And Andy Dalton looked pretty bad up until he looked okay in the second half, but that first half you could definitely tell he had some rust on him, and I'm not just talking about his hair color.
You can say that.
Okay, easy. I do not have red hair. It is strawberry blonde. It is very different than red.
Okay. I'm colorblind, man. I don't know.
Let's say I'm gonna put my hair color next to the Patriots jersey, and we can ask you which one's redder.
Fair.
Do you have any thoughts about the Vikings sneaking out a win? Double doink. We got a double doink too from that game.
We did have a double doink. You were just seeing like nom choppers, I bet, when you were watching that one live. Honestly, a little disappointed. I expected more out of the Vikings defense, especially considering how shorthanded the Saints offense was this week, because they were missing Jameis, Michael Thomas, Kamara. Were they down their center too? Who's the offensive lineman there?
I think Landry might have been playing, but he was pretty kind of hobbled.
I was going to look up the name. Not worth it. One of the offensive linemen was down, though, too. So, truthfully, I expected the Vikings defense to look a lot better. And this might just be a case of me placing too much stock in their week 1 performance, which I tend to do until we get to like week 5 or 6 with a lot of teams. But I thought this was going to be a double-digit Vikings win. I thought Kirk Cousins is playing in the exact opposite of prime time. If you read my blog from Friday, my Free Play Friday picks, I said this is like Kirk Cousins' wet dream. He's got a an 8:30 a.m. kickoff, well, at least here locally. So he should play well. The defense will look well, and they'll get Justin Jefferson going again, which they did a little bit. But yeah, that defense, I don't know.
Yeah. The Bills, I think, had a really important win against the Ravens because the final score was 23-20. I think they were down 20-3 at one point. They had a really rough first quarter. They were not taking care of the ball very well, but they really rallied around themselves and, gritted out a comeback win. And I think that's super important to have those types of victories, especially against the Ravens. The Ravens are a tough team anyways, but there's going to come a time when, maybe the Bills are down 17-0 against the Jets or something, and they're going to need to come back. But at the end of the day, when they come back and beat the Jets, everybody's like, well, that's just to be expected. But to come back against a team of the quality like the Ravens, especially with Lamar Jackson on the other side of the field, I think that's a very important win and a good way to win a football game when you're talking the dog days of January, when you're going to have those types of moments again, because you're not going to be playing the Titans and being able to win 41-10 or whatever in the playoffs. At least you shouldn't be. But so I think this was a huge win for the Bills, and I think a really important win because it definitely helps build some character for them.
And I think I saw some stat that in like one-score games, the Bills had a pretty abysmal record. So this kind of shows that they can come back when they're down and win these tight games. Like you said, it'll be big come the playoffs. The other thing that I found somewhat hilarious about this game was that I don't know anyone out there, but if anyone had bet the over in this game, they would have for sure thought it was going to cash in the first half, and then it didn't. I don't know if you noticed that, Matt. It was I kind of laughed at that.
Yeah, I heard it was a tough week for betting. I know I lost my Free Play Friday. How did your other four do?
I went 2-2.
Man, could have lost someone their mortgage.
6-2 on the year. I'll take it.
Could have lost someone their mortgage. Good thing there's that disclaimer at the bottom, so we're legally fine. I might need to get my brother Jay to check that real quick. Actually, Jay, if you're listening, go to our website and check that. Thanks.
And if you're listening and you don't know what we're talking about, every Friday, check out our socials. We're now putting out our wagers or some of us could wager if we were able to on some of these games. And Hickey even has a couple guest picks here and there. So,
yes, love the fact that I thought the Raiders-Broncos was going to be under because neither offense seems to be able to find the end zone. And then, of course, it was 55 points. And I think the under was 40.5.
It's okay. We'll talk about my under pick here in just a minute.
Okay. So the Bills-Ravens we just discussed was pretty poor weather. Remnants of Hurricane Ian, which we are continually still thinking about the people affected by Hurricane Ian. Fort Myers, all that area was pretty tough to see on social media, and NFL did a really good job of putting out campaigns and whatnot for donations, and the Glazer family in Tampa donating $1 million and the NFL matching it for relief efforts. That was really awesome to see. But the remnants of Hurricane Ian were affecting some of the East Coast games, so the Bills, Ravens, and Baltimore had pretty poor weather. Then the Eagles, Jags, and Philly had pretty poor weather as well. The Jaguars came out to a 14-0 lead, including a pick six, but the Eagles rallied 29-21. We'll have to put a pin in our hopes for the Jaguars for a little longer yet, but we still have some hope about them. I think the one thing that stood out to me is when you're going to get some of these high-caliber games for the Jaguars, and I know they just trounced the Chargers, a little shorthanded on the Chargers, and obviously Herbert, I don't think, was 100%, but still a really good win. In this type of situation, it looked like a night and day for Trevor Lawrence. Last week he looked bulletproof, and this week it didn't seem like he had any interest in taking care of the ball at all. And I know it was pouring rain and whatever, but you got to know your limitations in those kind of situations, especially against a good team like Philly.
So I do think Philly's good. I think they're one of the better teams in the NFC right now, based off of what we've seen so far this year.
The best.
Okay, in my mind, jury's still out a little bit on Philly. They went toe-to-toe with the Lions. They comfortably
Hey,
beat the Vikings.
I don't know if the Lions are as. I don't know if that's a good footnote because they're not terrible in my opinion.
The Lions also just went toe-to-toe with the Seahawks. So,
Well, they put up 45 points is more what I'm saying. So it's like
yeah, they can score on anyone. But so point being on the Eagles, they went toe-to-toe with the Lions. They comfortably beat the Vikings, comfortably beat the Commanders, who is probably the worst team in the NFC right now. Um,
n- n- no
who do you think?
in the NFC, Chicago.
Yeah. I would take Chicago over the Commanders.
Really, their receiving core is so good. They have one of the most underrated receiving cores in my opinion.
They do. They do. But so here's the Eagles. Just listen to this schedule the Eagles have coming up. You ready?
Yep.
Cardinals, a Dak Prescott-less Cowboys, Steelers, Texans, Commanders, Colts. So I don't know if we can really draw a judgment on the Eagles quite yet, even if they're 8-0.
Don't tell me we're not going to be able to judge them until they play Aaron Rodgers.
I'm that just happens to be the next game at the end of that. But then they play Green Bay and again, jury's still out on Tennessee. The Giants, the Bears, the Cowboys, the Saints, and the Giants. Philly could
17-0.
realistically I was just going to say Philly could realistically go 17-0 and not be one of the top 4 teams in the NFL just based on this schedule alone. So, I think they're very good, but I think the Philly hype train is going to get really hot here pretty soon, and I just don't know if it should be that hot.
Well, I honestly thought, given our preseason predictions, I had the Cowboys going 14-3. Do I think it's because the Cowboys are the best team in football? No. Their schedule's a joke. The NFC East got a nice lineup this year for their schedule. Mm-hmm. And still the Giants and the Commanders are still going to suck. Well, I mean, like the Giants, I say, are going to suck, but they're going to go 9-8. But with that schedule, if they had a slightly harder schedule with divisions, they would have been toast. So, yep. Or, they beat the Bears this week. Like, congratulations. I'm so proud of you. But, yeah, I definitely think, given where the Cowboys are without Dak, and yet Cooper Rush is 4-0 now, these two could definitely. I think both are going to make the playoffs at this point. The Cowboys and the Eagles. I think that's going to be no problem. I think sneaking into a wild card position for whoever doesn't win the division is going to be no problem for them. So good on the Eagles. Jalen Hurts still proving me wrong.
And yet you still have the Giants hanging around at 3-1.
That's annoying. Speaking of, can't wait for them to play a good team. Let's see. The Chiefs beat the Buccaneers, which was in Tampa. Did not get moved to Minneapolis, so good for the home fans down there to get to see the Mahomes-Brady matchup. Definitely was not expecting the Chiefs to hang 41 on them. That was quite shocking. It's amazing to me, and this is just kind of what we love about football is that the Chiefs couldn't put up anything past 17 on the Colts, but then can go down to Tampa against one of the best defenses and put up 41. And if we're gonna go ahead and start making comparisons about schedules and whatnot, the Packers didn't have that much success last week against the Buccaneers.
No, they did not, but the Buccaneers did not have that much success against the Packers either, so it goes both ways, my friend.
That's true. Well, I think that just says more about how bad the Chiefs' defense is, if I'm being honest. And that Mike Evans actually really helps in offense, which is really shocking, actually. I had no idea.
Shock face.
No idea. Also, well, since we're bringing up records, I also thought Mike Evans had a pretty nifty one. He is now, if I can find it, 33rd in all-time touchdowns with 78.
Wow.
Despite him being 57th in yards and 81st in catches, he's 33rd in touchdowns with 78. And speaking of records that are going to get destroyed at the pace we're all going, that receiving touchdowns record I think is pretty low given modern day standards. And especially with people like Evans and Kupp and DeAndre Hopkins and eventually guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown. Some of these guys that are just absolute touchdown vultures that get, they're good for 2 touchdowns every 3 games kind of people.
Yep.
So that's going to get trounced. But so yeah, I think I did not see the Chiefs hanging 41 on them before the game. I did not see Mike Evans being that much more important for that team. I think it just goes to show how important he is to the Buccaneers. And I think also I left the game realizing that the Buccaneers should be thankful because their division is a joke this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I still would not want to face them in the first round of the playoffs, but I also don't have the same sense of fear as I would about them as previous years. So
yep.
New era in Pittsburgh. Well, first of all, the Jets won by 4 points. And Zach Wilson, he looks fun. He looks like a fun player to watch. Now, do I sit back and kind of look at his stat line and go like, maybe Joe Flacco is probably better suited for this team? Oh, 100%. However, they picked Wilson with the second pick in the draft, and it's only his second year. So they got to give him a little more time. He is kind of a little bit of a wild card at times with some decision making, but he's also a lot of fun to watch. And I loved when he hit the gritty. I just think quarterbacks hitting the gritty hits a little different. I don't know why. But that's not the main headline from the weekend. Mitchell Trubisky was benched at halftime for Kenny Pickett. I think the wild stat from that game was that Kenny Pickett was 10 of 13 with 3 interceptions. So none of his balls hit the turf. It was all boom or bust. And they've named him the starter this week. So it's the Kenny Pickett era now. And I get kind of confused. I don't know. Do you think Tomlin's just playing peacekeeper when last week he's saying, we're not making any changes, I'm not there yet, no, Matt Canada's not getting fired, and no, Trubisky's not getting benched, and then 2 quarters later it's a whole new day in Pittsburgh?
Yes, because Tomlin has been the ultimate peacekeeper. I talked about this a few episodes back, but the way he handled the whole Antonio Brown and, oh my God, I can't even remember the running back's name now. Le'Veon Bell. Yeah, that whole situation and just how wild it must have been to be leading a team with those 2 characters at the same time. That's just what he's best at, is damage control.
Yeah, so I 100% think Kenny Pickett gives them a better chance to win. I think it was like Deontay Johnson said that they were in a rebuilding year. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think with TJ Watt out, it's definitely a different story for that defense. But if you have TJ Watt in there, you guys are definitely in contention for a wild card spot, especially if you can grind out some division wins against some tough opponents. I mean, I know their schedule is pretty poor, but we've seen longer odds from other teams to overcome that. So I think if Kenny Pickett can turn it around, it'll really help them get to the wild card. Can you pull up their next 4 games for me? Because I'm pretty sure they're about to head through the gauntlet right now. I think they're at Buffalo this weekend.
Oh yeah, it gets very tough. Bills, Buccaneers, Dolphins, Eagles are their next 4 games.
God, that's awful. So I guess baptism by fire for Kenny Pickett, but I think, given what we saw in preseason and looking at his highlights in college, definitely think he can fit the part. And I think he's got this nice little leeway now, as most rookie quarterbacks do, it's like, it's okay to go out there and make some mistakes because that's how you're going to learn, and we're not going to fire you, bench you, whatever. So just kind of like go out there, develop, and do your best.
Oh, and by the way, 3 of those 4 games are on the road.
God, what's the home one?
Tampa.
God, that's no good. And then the last one before we kind of grind through some of these, we mentioned the Lions lost to the Seahawks and one of the top 20 all-time scoring games in NFL history, 48-45, with a scoregami, our first scoregami of the year.
And
we got to be running.
This was my under of the week.
What was the under at?
50.
Ooh, the Seahawks almost broke that up.
Both teams almost broke it on their own.
Tell you what, Geno Smith has a top 5 QB rating in the NFL right now.
He does.
Did you see that Cooper Rush one too?
Yep. Yep.
I don't know. All this slandering I did of Pete Carroll before the season, I'm really gonna have to backtrack on that pretty hard. If Pete Carroll can get these guys to win 7 games, I will retract everything I've ever said about Pete Carroll.
Agreed on that. Also has a pretty bomb receiving core. But can we just agree that the Detroit Lions are right now the most confusing team in the NFL?
Yes, they're the only team to get, was it, I can't remember what their stat line was. They're the only team to be averaging over 35 points a game right now, and yet they're 1-3.
Yeah, it's insane.
Well, and here I am praising Jeff Okudah last week for his coverage on Justin Jefferson, and then DK Metcalf just absolutely wrecked him this week. I think that was one of my favorite moments of the week too. Is DK Metcalf needing to be carted off the field because he had to poop and couldn't hold it anymore, and walking was not an option.
We have all been there.
That happened back in your glory days in college or high school football, where you had to be carted to the porta potty.
We won't talk about any of my high school situations. Andrew Bannon, who's listening, you know what I'm talking about.
I think you need to text me, Andrew. I need to hear more about this. I think in 2 years' time, we could probably start to fill a book about Road America.
Yes, this is worse, though.
That's neither here nor there. But I think my favorite moment from Road America last year was on your first night getting a leg massage from a grown man.
Yes.
That was a lot of fun.
Yes.
More of those stories to come in June, I guess. All right, so combing through some of the games that we don't really talk about as much. Falcons beat the Browns by 3. Yay. The Cardinals beat the Panthers by 10, and Matt Rule's job is continually being in question. He doesn't seem to care. Baker Mayfield's job seems to be in question. He doesn't seem to care. So, all's good in Carolina. Titans beat the Colts by 7 in a continuing line of nothing makes sense in the AFC South. I can't tell if the Titans are just the most inconsistent team of all time or if they're actually noteworthy. I think the over-under on that one was 42.5, and they went into the fourth quarter at 41 points. So for anybody who is betting the over, I'm really sorry for you. The Cowboys beat the Commanders by 10. The Commanders suck, and Trayvon Diggs does not suck. I will tell you that right now. They did something coaching-wise, or I don't know if he got faster or what, but he seems to be so much more put together now than he was last year. And I would take this Trayvon Diggs over the 11 whatever interception Trayvon Diggs that there was last year, because he seems like a true shutdown corner right now.
Yeah, he looks a lot better. And they were talking about it on one of the broadcasts that the DB coach in Dallas is Al Harris.
Oh, really?
And that he's been working with him a lot. So shout out Al Harris.
It's that McCarthy connection.
Yeah.
And then also, again, shout out to Cooper Rush, who's now 4-0. My man. Carrying my argument for me for the end of time. Appreciate it. The Chargers bounced back 34-24. Eckler was in the end zone multiple times, which was very well received by fantasy owners who've been cringing so far at his lack of use by his coach. So good on them. And then the Raiders beat the Broncos by 9, which before the season I would have pegged as a really fun game, and now it was not as fun as I thought it would be, to be honest. But Devontae Adams gets his first win as a Raider, so good for him, I think.
Happy for him.
All right, well, if you were sponsoring the episode, this is where we read out your thing. So if you want to sponsor us, just let us know. Corrections from last week. I didn't know how many seasons Jared Goff had under his belt. He is now in his 7th year. Joe Horn, when he did his celebration, didn't actually call anybody. He just picked it up and did a mock call. But he did tell his son about the celebration and that he was going to call him. So his son was disappointed that he didn't. Turns out his son is J.C. Horn for the Panthers. I had no idea.
No, really?
Yeah, the cornerback for the Panthers is Joe Horn's son. I had no idea.
Wow.
Didn't make that connection. So that's interesting. Pete Carroll won 33 games in his first stint, which was 4 seasons. I didn't know how well or not well he did, but he actually seemed to be doing okay. He went from the Jets to the Patriots, which is kind of funny that multiple coaches have done that in their careers. And then last, talking about Jeff Okudah, I said he missed his rookie year. He actually missed all of last year minus the first game. So he played the first game, but then missed the rest of the last year, which was his second season. So now he's in his third season. So those are some corrections. We'll move on to Bears-Packers. We'll start with the Packers this week. So Packers won in overtime by 3 over the Patriots, who were without Mac Jones, as we expected, although Mac Jones did practice during the week. And so Brian Hoyer steps in and is injured, in the second quarter?
It is the second series.
Second series. Yeesh. And so up steps Zappi. Is that how you say it?
Yep, Bailey Zappi.
Bailey Zappi, the rookie quarterback from Western Kentucky, the good old Hilltoppers. And I already know. I don't even know if I should ask you questions. I already know what you're going to say. It's a process. It's an 18-week process. You just got to sit back and enjoy the ride. We're not going to be perfect right away. And we got to fine-tune some things. But I think this is the time to do it. And, yeah.
No. Here are my 3 or 4 big takeaways. Number 1, Rashawn Gary. Confirmed. Dog. Very good.
Timeout. Make you a little nervous with his contract coming up soon?
Yes, of course I've thought about that. But you know what, Matt? Those of us who like to enjoy the season don't let things like pending contracts bother us. But yes, I am well aware of the fact that we have to pay him.
You were supposed to say that the salary cap's a myth and we're just gonna give him $450,000 a year in base and $67 million a year in bonus.
It makes the whole moving on from Zadarius Smith thing look a lot better.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So, yeah, number 1, Rashawn Gary, dog, animal, beast, very good.
Second question to interrupt again. At what point do teams maybe just decide to start doubling him? I don't know. I'm not a football expert, but that really seems like a good idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they have started to a little bit. Here. I don't think Preston Smith is as good as his stats currently say, but he's also still like in top 5 in win percentage. So it's not like he's just a schlub on the other side of the ball, and Kenny Clark in the middle. So I don't know.
Kenny Clark
I think
is much better than Preston Smith.
He is, but you're just kind of talking different areas. Yeah. I think the other thing. So the second thing I was going to say, still on the defensive side, is for whatever reason, opening drives of the game, Joe Barry just treats like it's pregame warm-ups, apparently, because we cannot stop anybody on the opening drive. We haven't really done it all season.
Vic Fangio used to do that all the time, and it annoyed me. I mean, it was fine because it worked itself out, but it was still just like, all right, why don't we just surrender here?
Yeah, and it's hard to really take anything away from this one because of who the offense we were playing. But, like, you take away that opening drive, and this defense only gave up 10 points, 13 points. Because the pick 6 obviously isn't on the defense, so take away those 14, and you're 13 points. And the same is for all these other games. Again, the opening drive is very, very important, so I'm not saying that it doesn't matter, but it's just crazy how that has been seemingly one of the biggest weaknesses of this defense. And I don't know if they're coming out cold or if, like, the scripted plays these teams run are just that good. I don't know. Also not great that we were down Jair and also Amos fairly quickly, 2 very important players. So still have a lot of faith in this defense. I know I've kind of talked bad about Joe Barry, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. The other thing I wanted to add was I don't know if Rodgers was as bad as his stats show or if Bill Belichick did that good a job of drawing up a defense to throw off the Packers offense, but man, in the first half he looked bad. He looked really, really bad. And that pick six, only the fourth of his career in Lambeau, is like unheard of. I even blogged on Friday that I thought he was going to have a phenomenal game because his passer rating is like 130 during the months of October at Lambeau. So kudos to Bill Belichick and the Patriots defense for making him look very mediocre, especially in the first half. And then my third and final takeaway was that I think these rookie receivers are going to start to come into their own come the later part of the season. Despite that drop, Romeo Doubs looked very, very good again.
Yeah, about that. I personally hated the challenge.
Oh, LaFleur said it was 100% emotional, which I'm glad he was honest about because I thought it was a dumb challenge too.
Yeah, I don't know if that makes it better or worse, to be honest. I don't know. I thought it was really stupid. I had several beers when I was watching that game, and I could tell that was not a catch.
Yeah, it was. I think it was more clearly not a catch than the Dez not a catch play.
Well, we don't need to go there. That was I'm really glad you didn't win the Super Bowl that year because that was straight robbery.
There was 6 minutes left in the game, but we're not going to get into that now.
No, there's a lot to untangle with that.
The thing with that play though is like, should he have caught it? 1,000% yes, but I also think that's a pass that he probably catches 9 out of 10 times. I'd like to think so at least. But I digress. Do you have any other questions you'd like to ask me?
No, I think the only other one was the challenge was pretty poor, and I mean, I just didn't see this coming. I don't think anybody saw it coming. I will continue to champion the voice of the people out there that think that the Packers are a little overrated. I think defensively they're okay. I'd say a firm top 5, but I still don't know what they're going to be able to do when they run across Allen or Mahomes or a Tom Brady he has his full complement of receivers.
We get to find out. We do get to find out.
Who do you
play? The Bills.
Oh, that's right.
And the Dolphins. We get to play both.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how much. I think the Dolphins are definitely overrated. But I'm looking at who you could potentially be playing this year. I mean, even the Lions offense, I would be a little scared of. I'm not saying that Goff's a top 5 QB, but I think they're obviously doing something right with their offense this year. So there's them. Vikings are nothing. Well, I guess you got them at Lambeau now, so I wouldn't be too worried. Yeah, we'll see.
I don't apologize for losses, especially in the National Football League. However, this one I was visually frustrated during this one because it should have been a bigger win. And again, admittedly, that pick six made all the difference. But again, that's football. That happens. Turnovers are a huge part of the game. But I also can tell that Elton Jenkins isn't at 100% yet, and they might do some more shuffling on the offensive line. So we'll see. But 3-1, I'll take it. I thought we would be 1-3 at this point in the season. So yeah.
Hey, the Giants are 3-1.
They are. Bears could be.
Really?
Could you imagine if the Bears are 3-1 if they just would have completed all those crazy hook and ladders at the end of the game and then somehow scored the 2-point conversion and then won in overtime? The Bears could be 3-1.
It's like a microcosm of the Bears season right now. And I love it's not true, but I love the people on Twitter who's saying that Justin Fields' best throw of the day was the cross-field lateral that he threw right on the money to whoever that was.
It did look pretty good. I was just watching the highlights earlier, and it was a dime. It was a frozen rope, as they say.
Yeah. So, where do you want to start?
So with that, so I didn't see much of that game.
Yeah.
I just saw some of the highlights here and there, which was one of those games that Red Zone kind of forgot about.
Don't blame me.
What is your take on the offense now? We know where you felt last week. On the open in the first quarter, the offense looked better, worse, okay. You were too many beers in that you didn't care.
Honestly, thought we looked a little better. I small steps. I know when you start at the floor, you really only have one place to go, which is up. I was Justin Fields didn't look as bad this week. There was one really, really bad one where he stepped up in the pocket and had Darnell Mooney wide open, streaking in for a touchdown, and he just missed it and ran it. And I was like, that's one there you're going to watch that on film and just go like, what the hell were you doing? But part of me also doesn't blame that he was scrambling because he had been running for his life all day. Our run blocking seems to be quite good. Our pass blocking is so pathetic that, when you combine that with his lack of receiving talent, and he had one just absolute dime to Dante Pettis that was dropped in such a pathetic manner. It was like a, back shoulder over the head of the defender throw that Pettis hit him right in the hands and he just dropped it. And it's just so frustrating when, you have a quarterback that needs help and is calling on his receivers to make plays for him when he puts them in positions to make plays and they just let him down. That's kind of frustrating. So I left the game feeling a little better about him. That one deep pass to Mooney had to build some confidence, and it's like, hey, we can do that, more often. Yep. if we don't suck. We got Mooney more involved. We got Kmet more involved. But then I think the next area of focus for us is definitely the red zone offense. Settling for 4 field goals is never fun. And they showed a graphic of our play selection in the red zone so far this year, which was 1 pass and 19 runs. And it's just like, again, that is just not a winning formula in football anymore. I mean, you're basically saying if you get to third down, because we don't score a lot of touchdowns. So you're saying if we get to third down, you're just assuming it's a 3rd and 1 and we're running it up the middle because we're never going to pass it. Or if we just get to a third and 10, we're just running it. Is that what's happening? So that's obviously not a good recipe in my opinion. I did think the play calling was a little better this week though. So I think it's a foundation to build on when, again, you're talking about a team that isn't very good. And we do have, we don't play well in Minnesota, but we did just talk about the Vikings defense not really scaring a whole lot of people right now. So potentially a chance for us to do something on offense. But I think I left the game, actually. The offense wasn't the scariest part of our game. Our run defense is horrible. I think we're the worst run defense in the league right now after what Damian Pierce did to us 2 weeks ago and then now Saquon Barkley did to us this week. So while the passing game gets more attention for sure, our run defense is actually on the verge of being worse than our passing game, which is quite sad. I didn't think that was going to happen. So definitely not ready to throw in the towel yet on Justin Fields. And I will say the one final thing I'll say about it is the narrative in the offseason was that Ryan Poles wasn't doing enough to surround Justin Fields with talent and that he had given up on him and blah, blah, blah. The narrative turned real quick to Justin Fields sucks really fast by a lot of people. So I'm wondering if people kind of forgot that this team is just not a good team and that Justin Fields does need to play better. No doubt about it. But he's not the only problem right now on this team. He's just, it's just the nature of football and that he's going to shoulder a lot of the blame. But I really don't think we can, again, throw in the towel on him until week 4 of next year if he's still really bad.
So I don't know where you're at from I want to win football games or I'm okay looking good and losing so we get a good draft pick, but that might change the answer to your question here, or to my question. What did you think of the 4th and 2 punt with 3 minutes to go from the 45?
What's the surrender index on that one?
With all your timeouts, by the way.
I would go for it. I guess that's where I'm at. I'm too early on to have anything negative to say about Coach Flus quite yet. If this was Matt Nagy in his 4th year, I'd be teeing off right now. But I more care about us looking good, even if we lose. And that's one of those you look back on situations, you'd be like, wow, we probably should have just really gone for it. Although 2 yards in our offense is like 15 yards to the average offense. So it's a tough one. I would have gone
Hand it
for
to
it.
David Montgomery. There you go, David. Get 2 yards.
He wasn't even in the game.
Wow, shows how much I was paying attention at that point.
Yeah, he's out. It was Khalil Herbert. But no, I think even getting 2 yards right now is super painful. So I don't know. I maybe play the field position and hope for a turnover. I don't know. But definitely, well, I'm trying to find the. Why don't you keep talking for a second? I'm going to find the surrender index on that one real quick.
I did think that the Bears' special teams looked pretty good.
Thank you.
Their punt coverage was very good. They forced a fumble on one of the punts. Is that early in the second half, end of the first half? I think that was. But yeah, the rush defense did look a little subpar. I guess the one thing I'll say is even though you didn't go for that punt, I guess they did hold them to 3 and out, and then get the ball back. But still.
Yeah, surrender index. So surrender index, for those who don't know, it's this account that basically looks at the analytics of where the ball is on the field, what the fourth and yardage is to go, and how much time is remaining, and then what the score is. And they use all this to create a formula to come up with a number that shows how much of a surrender it was just to punt the ball. And this particular situation was 26.46 on the surrender index, which is in the 98th percentile of cowardly punts of the 2022 season and the 97th percentile of all punts since 1999. So cowardly flues, I guess, according to the surrender index. But again, if this is the divisional round playoff game, I think I would definitely have more feelings than I would if it was the Giants in New York in a meaningless Week 4 game, because both these teams suck and neither of them deserve to win, to be honest. And part of that run defense too is it's kind of frustrating that their primary means of gaining yards was bootlegging with Daniel Jones, and we just didn't seem to want to adjust to that scheme until we came out in the third quarter. So we were perfectly fine giving it up in the first half, but then once we got to the third quarter, we finally decided we kind of wanted to stop it. So that was a little frustrating. Daniel Jones did go out with an ankle injury. Tyrod Taylor checked into the game and then got absolutely murdered on a scramble. Thankfully, he was able to run to the locker room, but I'm pretty sure he was concussed, so that was not good, but that hit was pretty vicious. And then so they had to do Saquon Barkley as the quarterback for a little bit there in Wildcat, and they had to keep Daniel Jones on the field as a receiver so he could call on the plays. So they called the play to Daniel Jones. He would just go stand down the side, and Saquon would do his thing. So that probably played into the punting. I didn't even think about that. Probably another reason why they were okay punting, because they knew that it was going to be tough for the Giants to get a first down with no quarterback.
True.
So that's all I got about it. Again, never fun to lose, but it's not surprising in the slightest. Speaking of losing, didn't give you crap about this yet, that the Badgers definitely did not cover against the Buckeyes a couple weeks ago. Was it 18.5? And I said it was going to be 3 touchdown minimum. It was 28-0 after the first quarter. So
it was like 52-21 final.
Coach Christ of the Badgers has been fired, and Jim Leonard is now your interim head coach in Wisconsin. Happy, sad?
I think you'll be able to turn that title from interim to full-time head coach in just a few weeks. Is my thought, because I think Jim Leonard was gone pretty soon either way for a head coaching position, just given what he's done as a D coordinator. So I think the stars kind of aligned to make this decision.
Did you watch the Ohio State game?
No, I didn't. I was at a wedding. So Ohio State notwithstanding.
Or 34 points to Illinois at home.
Well, Chris kind of committed like the cardinal sin of Wisconsin, where like you're always due to get blown out by Ohio State. Okay, that happened. You're always due to have a really disappointing loss to a conference opponent. Okay, Illinois happened. And, oh, by the way, you're going to lose while you're ranked at home to an unranked opponent. Like, one of those is always going to happen in a given season. But to have all three happen in one season, I think kind of was the final nail in the coffin.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Illinois' coach is the former Badgers coach, correct?
Yep, Brett Bielema, former Badgers coach. And him and Christ had almost identical head coaching records as Wisconsin coaches going into that game.
So I feel like that should also be kind of like the quad.
Yeah, true. Yes.
Add that to the
true,
trifecta.
True.
Losing at home to an unranked Illinois team where the former coach is the Wisconsin Badgers former head coach. So
yes.
Love
yes.
that. The Patriots are bringing back Jamie Collins for his 4th stint with the team. What'd they do? Just wake up and like, oh yeah, we forgot. We didn't need you anymore. And then just cut him again.
I signed in and giggled when I saw that.
Well, how many times do you have to cut a guy before you're like, maybe not a good idea to bring him back? Or are they just that desperate?
Desperate, I guess.
They saw one A.J. Dillon carry and were like, you know what? We got to fix this ASAP. I don't know. Crazy. But it's kind of like this joke from Mad Men where they talk about this like divorced couple that gets back together. He's like, the dude's just going to wake up one day and go, oh, yeah, I forgot. I still hate you. So we'll see about that. So we talked a couple weeks ago about how Kyler Murray alleged / there was video of a Raiders fan slapping him. The response from Murray after everything was said and done, he did come out and say, it's all good, no hard feelings. I would actually shake that person's hand. Just move on. You're shaking your head.
Well, I'm just laughing because all I can think about is that video on the airline where the guy's like, I want to shake his hand. Let me shake his hand. I want to shake his hand. And I just picture Kyler Murray yelling that at this guy like next time he sees him at the stadium.
That video did not go how I thought it was going to go. I thought that dude was going to punch somebody in the face. He also looks super menacing. So
I want to shake his hand.
Yeah.
I want to shake your hand. Yeah, that's all I could think about when I saw that.
So there was a Utah student who threatened to bomb a football stadium. I can't remember if it was the Utah stadium or San Diego State stadium, but a Utah student threatened to bomb the stadium if the Utes lost to San Diego State University. I think an important footnote here is that the person was apprehended. A lesser important footnote is Utah did actually win that game. This was from a couple weeks ago, but no stadiums were harmed in the making of the Utes win. So
that's
just
such
a game.
typical. That's such a typical college kid. Like, if this doesn't happen, I'm going to do that. Like before the internet, you know how many times this was probably uttered. You know.
This Tyreek Hill thing is kind of funny. He actually came out in a press conference. I don't know why he was giving a press conference, to be honest. They just put a microphone in front of him and had journalists there. But there's a couple things he said was kind of funny, but I think the one that made me chuckle the most is that he ended up choosing Miami over the New York Jets this offseason because of the taxes. And it got me thinking, what is the best division to play in as far as taxes go? And I think I landed on the AFC South. Because you have, let's say you are a Houston Texan. You have 8 to 9 games in Houston. You have 1 game at minimum in Florida. You have 1 game in Nashville. You have 1 game in Indianapolis. So there's 11 or so games, 11 to 12 games right there that are pretty minimally taxed. And then, you got the rest for whatever. And then the worst division to play in if you're trying to make money would be the NFC West. For sure, barring the Cardinals. The Cardinals, you're okay, but if you're a LA Ram, you got 8 to 9 games at home, 1 game in Seattle, 1 game in San Francisco, and then scattered throughout. Because you're taxed based on what state you're playing in at the time. So for like the Rams, they were just playing in San Francisco, so it's still California tax. But whenever they play the Cardinals, they're making extra money that day.
Yep. This made me laugh because I feel like it was probably tongue-in-cheek, but because you tell me, Hickey, would you take Miami or New York, regardless of the money?
Jets.
You take Zach Wilson over Tua?
Oh, I was more talking about, like I'd take New York City and all of the fun things that I could do in New York City. You're talking about a guy who doesn't particularly like warm weather, and I love New York City, so I think maybe I was the wrong person to ask. Not
Ugh.
necessarily looking at the football
Ugh.
situation of things. I would take New York City in a heartbeat.
Ugh.
What is there to do in Miami other than get arrested?
At least it's warm. Okay, you can go
It's
golfing.
like too warm.
You can go to
you
the
just
beach.
see the game.
You
the
can
other
go
day?
fishing. You can go out
Oh
on
my
your
God,
boat.
they were melting on the field.
You can go flying all year round.
Didn't you just say that you can? There's many ways that you can warm up, but you can't cool down.
I did, but maybe it's also just the New York City factor just doesn't interest me. Like having to deal with that
Have you been to
media
New York City?
market. No, but if it's anything like Chicago.
Manhattan's pretty cool. Manhattan is Chicago on steroids.
But that's the thing. I'd love to visit. I couldn't live there.
I think that's fair. Well, it depends where I lived. I think if I lived in like a flat in Manhattan, I'd probably go crazy. But there's more than one place to live in New York City, especially when you actually play in New Jersey. So, yeah. But yeah, I would. I think I'm the wrong person to ask. I would take New York City, but I would have to suffer through the taxes then of New Jersey. I think, however that works. Lastly, I kind of want to just do a quick fantasy football update for our teams. My team is stacked. By the way, I'm 2-2, but I am I haven't been this happy about a fantasy football team of mine in many, many years. It is loading, but my quarterback is Jalen Hurts. Love that for me. I love we do an auction, $200, half point PPR. Quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex, 1 kicker, 1 defense. Currently, my starting lineup is Jalen Hurts, Nick Chubb, Edwards-Helaire, Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, Mark Andrews, and Breece Hall, who's definitely on the upswing for the Jets. Love that. Kicker is Carlson, the former Viking. And my defense is about to be the Eagles. I currently have the Bears. I thought the Bears would do a little better this week, but I'd like to change my defenses every week based on matchups. And then notable guys on my bench, Amari Cooper, hit and miss, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and Ramondre Stevenson. And by the time this comes out, I will hopefully have just acquired Alan Lazard on waivers, which I have no idea why he's on waivers right now. I think someone panic dropped him after week 1 and nobody noticed. So hopefully by the time you're listening to this, I have Alan Lazard on my team. So I'm 2-2 though. But how's your team look?
Dude, we couldn't be more hot and cold. So I'm 1-3.
How'd your quarterback do this week?
Well, he's concussed. So I have a 1 quarterback, 2 receiver, 2 running back, tight end, 2 flex, and then a super flex, which is another quarterback, plus kicker, defensive flex player, DB, D-line, linebacker. I did have Tua, but luckily I was able to scoop Cooper Rush off waivers.
The GOAT.
So, yep, got Cooper Rush. My receivers starting is Stephon Diggs and A.J. Brown. My running backs are Delvin Cook and Tony Pollard. My tight ends, who I've kind of rotated, have been Tyler Higbee and Dawson Knox. Cam Akers is one of my flex, and then Isaiah McKenzie from Buffalo is the other flex. So that means my bench right now is Tua, Devontae Smith, Dawson Knox, Allen Robinson, Devin Duvernay.
Smith on your bench?
I moved him. I relegated him for Isaiah McKenzie.
Mistake.
Nope. Isaiah McKenzie has put up 33 points this year, and Devontae Smith has put up 36. And I just made that switch because the Pittsburgh defense has not looked good. And then Christian Watson also on my bench. Robbie Gould's my kicker. My defense is Jordan Poyer, Derwin James, Aaron Donald, and Fred Warner. And I am 1-3. So it looks like I am predicted to win this week, so that's a good thing.
I think you'd be predicting more if you had Devontae Smith in your team.
Nope, he's predicted 2 less points than Isaiah McKenzie this week.
That's all I'm going to think about on Sunday now.
Every time I bench Isaiah McKenzie, he scores a touchdown, and then I start him, and then he doesn't. So
just sticking with it. All right.
Sticking with it.
One fan question before we get to our Mouthguard of the week. Comes from John Farr. Wants to know, been a contentious issue as far as penalties last couple weeks regarding delay of game. Seems like delay of game should be a pretty black and white decision. Are you okay with the back judge making the call, or should a new system be put into place? Thank you, John, for the question. I know my answer. Go ahead with your answer.
I never really had thought about it until it had been brought to the forefront the last few weeks. But I'm in favor of doing like a shot clock type system. Like, obviously, the sound of the shot clock isn't going to be as powerful as you would get at an NBA game. But as long as you have that red light, I feel like as soon as that red light's on, like if the ball's snapped, you're good. If it's not snapped, penalty. I'd kind of gone back and forth on should it be a reviewable call then at that point to be as the ball snapped at the shot clock, kind of like in the NBA, they'll review if a ball got off. I'm kind of against it just because reviews slow the game down enough, but of course there's going to be one or two that would screw a team when it should have been a play clock. But I'm a fan of the shot clock type approach. Just put a red light at right on top of the play clock in each end zone.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'm a black and white kind of guy, and there should definitely be a way around this. I think penalties, I mean, they did have the challenge, the pass interference for a year or two, which I thought sounded good on paper, but then didn't really sound good in execution, especially because nothing ever got overturned, really. But something as black and white as a play clock, I think leaving it down to human error is potentially a mistake, especially when it doesn't need to be, because it's something as definitive as you have 1 second or you don't have any seconds. So, John, thanks for spurring my brain, because I do agree that they should come up with a better system for that, because then we would avoid all the controversy that comes out of that, or getting Jumbotron people fired for no reason. Neither here nor there. Anything else before we get to our Mouthguard of the week? Or I guess mine?
Nope.
All right, mine's LSU based. LSU hosts Tennessee this weekend. Really excited. Ever since our devastating loss to Florida State, we've looked pretty good. We had a really solid comeback win against Auburn. One of the reasons we had that comeback win against Auburn this week, we were down 17-0, ended up winning 21-17 at Jordan-Hare in Alabama. This receiver on Auburn named Coy Moore used to be an LSU player, entered the transfer portal and left and went to Auburn. Don't mind that. I mean, obviously, when a guy like Eli Ricks transfers, kind of hurts, especially when he goes to Alabama. But it's a college kid, and it's hard to get mad at him because they're trying to do what's best for them. So at the end of the day, wish him the best. He had 2 good years at LSU, things like that. Coy Moore, honestly, had never heard of him. He was a receiver. He went on a podcast a couple weeks ago and said that during his time at LSU, he was the best receiver in that room. Keeping in mind that future top, we'll say 25 pick in the draft, Kayshon Boutte, is at LSU. I think Coy had 2 catches while he was at LSU. Okay. If that's the kind of game you're going to play, that's fine. So you got a kind of a mini revenge game coming up here against LSU. So what does he proceed to do? Well, they did an end around to Coy, who it was a passing end around. So he took the ball, threw it right to an LSU player. Our true freshman, Harold Perkins, who is going to be a top 10 pick in 3 years. Go ahead and bookmark that. So there was mistake number 1. And then in a critical moment of the game when Auburn needs to drive to score a touchdown with like 3 minutes to go or whatever, he runs a slant route. Quarterback puts it right on him, hits him in the chest and hands, and an LSU player literally rips it out from his chest and intercepts the ball. And it's like thinking to myself, you know what, Coy Moore? You're kind of our MVP for the week. And after, it would have been fine if you had transferred and then played that way and like, you know, it would have been like, oh, haha, that's what you get for transfer, whatever. But when you run your mouth the week leading up to the game and then proceed to lay an egg, it's comically funny. And the backlash on social media has been swift, and it's like, you know, all in good fun, like, ha ha ha. But, you know, kind of one of those around to find out moments, I guess, eh? That's it. That's all I got for the Mouthguard. I don't know if you had any of those moments in your glory days. Did you like transfer high schools and then talk a bunch of smack? And
No, I did talk a lot of smack, but never to my former team.
I've only ever seen you talk smack in duck race.
I like to talk some smack. It doesn't come out very often, but when I like to talk some smack, it'll come out.
I've definitely calmed down over the years, and I think with like people that are really close to me, like you, it's like it's more banter than I would say talking smack. Because like I try to make it pretty apparent that I'm like joking, or like that it's all in like good fun. Like, oh, haha, you rolled 2 6s, you suck at this. So it's like obviously that's not something you can control.
Yeah.
So, anyways, thank you all so much for listening. Week 5 coming up. Bears travel to Minnesota and are going to lose by 10 plus. And Packers go to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London. And they are going to do what, David?
Lord knows at this point. I have no read on this team, but they are going to win by 7. I have no clue.
I had it about 8.5, so right on the money. I think they'll do just fine. But we'll see. It's also really convenient that Daniel Jones has picked up an injury right before they play him. It's really weird. But neither here nor there because that never happens, right?
It's your fault. This wasn't a thing till you said it was a thing.
Spoken into existence. But hey, everybody, thanks for listening, and we hope you have a lovely weekend.